Hey, what's up? This is Alex. And as you can see on my daily results here, we're closing up day number 17 down $84.09 on a loss of 3.35%. And I would describe this day as a hard-earned loss because I really deserved every piece of the P&L on this one. I pretty much made some pretty bad mistakes on all three of my trades. But what happened after my trades in the simulator is what I really want to talk about today. It's rare that I will, spend a lot of time on practice trades, but something I did today I think was pretty interesting, and I got really carried away on an experiment. And so I'm going to just run through the trades today. I'm not even going to show the charts. I'm just going to show my trade log, run through the details there, and then get to some more important stuff because there's a lot of things I want to talk about today, and I know for sure I'm not going to be able to get to all of them or even a large percentage of them if I get heavy into my simulator trades. So the background information today was last night. It all started last night. I was watching some TV, which is a very rare occurrence for me. I was watching some Rick and Morty on my computer, and things started lagging. The videos weren't loading very well, and I decided to run an internet speed test, which returned a download speed of 0.26 megabits per second, which is even worse than the 1.2 that I thought I had. And it was pretty funny because the internet speed test returned a message that said your internet is very slow. It basically told me like your internet sucks. You should really get some different internet. Another super relevant factor, well, there's two of them. Number one, and most importantly, is that I did not sleep well last night. I woke up for some reason at 3 a.m. and very uncharacteristically, I was unable to get back to sleep. I tried for an hour and a half to get back to sleep, and I never succeeded, so I just woke up at 3 a.m. today. And another thing that I did wrong coming into the day, a factor, was that I didn't eat before I took my first trade. I'm such an asshole sometimes that I'm even an asshole to myself. I live alone, and I had put an empty egg carton back into the fridge like an asshole, and that made me think that I had eggs waiting for me in the morning, which is my standard breakfast, and I did not. I woke up to find the empty egg carton and realized, ah, damn it, I don't have any eggs. And so by the time that I took my first trade, I had been awake for 4 hours and I had not yet eaten. And so here on my first trade at 7:30, I made a few mistakes in this. I was slow on the trigger to get in. I meant to get in at 375 on APOP. I got in at 380, so high fill right away. My profit target was only 20 cents, and instead of just ditching the whole thing with a 250 share entry, which is what I should have done, I thought about yesterday's trade, the first one on NNDM, where I didn't hold the second piece long enough, and so that played on my mind, and in an instant I decided to go against my original plan and to just sell half of 125 shares and then hold the flyer to try and get a better fill on the rest. And what ended up happening is I stopped out on the way back down, and that cut into my profits by quite a bit, and you can see the impact of commissions on this one was pretty high. And following that first trade pre-market on APOP, that's when I went to the store, bought eggs, bought bread, got my breakfast together, completed my pre-market checklist and then some. Tried to sort of refocus and get set for the next trade. And the next trade that I ended up taking, despite all that preparation, was still a fairly stupid one in my opinion. Both at the time I thought it wasn't good, and looking back now I think it's even worse. My entry was only 125 shares, which really speaks to how low my confidence level was and how risky the setup was. I ended up getting out exactly at my stop, and the one thing that I did right in this trade is that my hands were lightning fast on the exit. I made a really good read, and I got out at precisely at my stop, not below. And I was right about that. It did crack 375, and it did wash very quickly down to 360. So I am happy that I avoided a bigger loss on this one, but I'm just not happy with the fact that I got involved so early in the day on such a small position. In my opinion, leading up to the bell, I thought I should really wait for some chart to develop, and I went against that plan and took a bad trade. Now, my third and final trade on PDSB, I have mixed feelings about. It was on my watch list pre-market. It sold off out of the bell, and I hadn't paid too much attention to it until I had seen it pop suddenly on relatively high volume. This ended up being a 2-entry, 2-exit loss, which is not something I normally like to do. You can see that, I did that again up here, and then these two trades from that horrible loss day, I also had multiple entries and multiple exits. So I feel like this may represent a sub-ideal trade. And in my defense, this was the trade that got affected by internet issues. I started seeing some lag while I was in this trade, and that did affect the eventual brutal slippage that I got. My initial risk was only 396, I believe, and I ended up surpassing that on both exits by quite a bit. So this turned into a $68 loss roughly, and immediately upon closing that trade, due to the internet issues, due to my lack of sleep and my overall condition, I thought like these were the signs that I was about to snowball a day. You know, with my first trade being pretty sketchy and then my second trade being one that I got a lot of slippage on, I felt like these are the conditions that lead to a snowball day, and I'm not willing to do that. So I'm just going to swallow this $84 loss and move on to tomorrow. Now, at that same time, I did have a potential practice trade developing on APOP that I really wanted to get involved in. So it was at this point that I made this video here. Hey guys, what's up? This is Alex. I'm just making this real quick. I just took a bad trade on APOP out of the bell and then butchered a trade on PDSB pretty badly, getting slippage all around. So I'm going to close this day out right now down 84.09, and I'm most likely going to get involved in some practice trades following this very quickly. I may or may not be able to get the recap done in between. I highly doubt it. So I'm just going to throw this video out there and then continue on and make the recap once I'm done with my practice trades. Now, initially, my practice trades had all revolved around a potential short squeeze reversal setup on APOP, which is something that I've been learning more and more about as I follow Velocity Trading, because the host of the chat room that I follow every day, his name is Nick, and he's a really big fan of these plays where the price drops out of the bell, traps a bunch of shorts, and then squeezes up. And I've been thinking more and more that that's probably better than what I do, what I typically look for, which is just an immediate break of the pre-market high, very bullish patterns. And he looks for more shorts to get in first so that the squeeze going up really has a lot more potential to it. And this is making more and more sense to me. However, I don't have any experience with this setup. Now, risking off of 325 the whole time, I took my first entry on this practice trade at 341. And as you can see, I followed it up with 3 add-ons going up, with the most aggressive one being at 356, because the resistance at that time was 355. And so as soon as it broke, I took a half position add-on at 356 to give me an average around 348. And throughout this trade, there was a washout that happened down from the 50s into the high 20s, where I tried to stop out of the whole trade in the high 30s and I missed. My order did not get filled as a result of internet issues. And these internet issues really kind of sparked a lot of ideas in my head about what I could do with this day and how much I could learn. And the question I had started by asking myself is, well, even though I know that internet problems are going to, cause hardship for me, I don't actually have any data or any experience to know exactly how I'm going to react if ever I'm stuck in that position. And so when this washout took place on APOP, I thought, well, this is kind of giving me like a really good opportunity to see what I can do here. At first, I was thinking, well, I should just restart, get everything, freshened up, close a bunch of programs, whatever it is. It could be my computer. I don't even know. I've had a lot of these types of difficulties lately. I did have my screen recorder up and running, which I thought may have slowed things down. And I thought, well, let's, instead of restarting and instead of making this better, let's actually make this worse and try to accumulate some experience of what I could maybe do to get some experience in a really tough situation. So what I'm going to do for you now is cut in 2 videos that I took intraday. The first one is going to be self-explanatory. I do have audio. I set up my mic to explain what I was doing. The second one does not have audio. It's simply me recording my first trade on APOP. And the bit I'm going to give you of that first trade pre-market on APOP is the order I have highlighted here at 748.07, which is my half position exit at 401. And you'll see the difference in this. The one on APOP doesn't have audio, so I'll just tell you that the button I'm using is Control A, which is sell half the position on the bid. And what I want you to pay attention on that snippet is the positions window and the orders window. Feel free to pause, rewind, and look again if you need to. But what I want you to notice is that no order ever shows up in the order window. It's so fast that all you'll see in the shares here in the positions is you'll see the shares cut in half, but you won't actually see an order pop up, which will contrast quite a bit to the first video. Hey guys, this is Alex once again. I'm currently sitting in a practice trade, just waiting for some resolution one way or the other. As you can see, I'm pretty heavy into this thing right now, and I'm also experiencing and have been experiencing some pretty severe internet problems for the last couple of minutes. So I figured I'd take a live video and show you exactly what I'm talking about when I talk about choppiness in the level 2 and the tape. And I do have a little bit of live video from my trade pre-market on APOP. So what I'm going to do in the recap once I make it is compare these two, and you can really see the difference. I'm actually going to throw out an order that won't get filled so you can see the delay. So I'll say now when I'm, or I'll say go when I'm hitting the order, okay? Go. Oops, hold on a second. Oh, I'll have to cancel that other one. One sec. Go. So there was about probably 3/4 of a second delay there. And on the cancellation of that order, there was probably about 1 second of delay, which when I show you my pre-market situation, you'll see the difference and you'll see what a hassle it is and why I'm so keen on avoiding these types of situations with my simulator. But right now, this is actually resolving to the downside, so I have to go and pay attention to this trade right now. So that was the first video, and now I'll show you the one that took place pre-market. Now, I think my lack of editing skill really made that a lot less interesting than I wanted it to be. So let's move on to the rest of my practice trades. So on my trade on APOP, this one here with these 4 entries, on this exit right here, this was meant to be 324. And by this point in the day, I had closed a lot of programs that I had open, including my screen recorder. And so I don't have any more live video to offer, but basically this exit at 308, this was the result of a mad scramble. I tried to get out initially at 324 and then probably half a dozen times in between 324 and the eventual exit at 308. And this exit at 308, this was me manually typing into the montage window, sell 375 at $3. So I was annoyed at how the price kept dropping as I entered my order and as I got 1 or 1.5 seconds of delay on that order. And so I just said, to hell with this. My adjustment to this situation is going to be just put out a way lower order and then have it fill for sure at whatever the bid price happened to be once the order went through. And that ended up being 308. And it was at this point that I had decided to really step up the level of intensity of this experiment. I went from just having a practice trade on APOP to deciding to just layer in a whole bunch of different things and really make this a very difficult challenge. And what I was looking to do here is to try and find my limits, to try and test myself to see like at what point do I get overwhelmed with situations and how many things can I throw in to make this more and more difficult. So like I said at the beginning of the video, I had got very little sleep. I had been up for quite a while at this point, a lot longer than I would normally be up for and still be trading. And there were so many things going against me. My internet problems, the fact that I was still in this trade with half a position on APOP and experiencing some pretty extreme slippage. And so I started looking around for different things I could do to add more intensity to that. And the first thing I decided to do was get involved with a trade on BRP, which was an IPO. And when I saw that, I thought, oh, perfect. And the only piece of information that I let myself research was how big was the IPO, and it was 16.4 million shares, and that's all I let myself look into. I didn't allow myself to look into any fundamentals or anything like that because I wanted to add a trade. First of all, I wanted to have multiple trades open at the same time, and you can see I took another one on TROV, which I'll get to shortly. But the thing I wanted to test myself on here was how well can I react to a purely tape in level 2 situation, because I didn't have any information to go on. There was no daily chart, there was no history, there was no fundamental catalyst or anything like that. And so I wanted to try and see how well I could manage 2 trades in a horrible situation where a lot of things were working against me. And shortly after that, like I said, I added a trade on TROV. Now, this trade was my decision to add another trade, which I was familiar with. This was a high a day breakout, and it was one that I had initially wanted to be 1,000 shares on the first entry, but I got rejected on buying power because on that point I had two trades open already, and the second one, the one on BRP, was a more expensive stock and it was restricted, and so I wasn't able to use a lot of buying power, and so by the time I entered on TROV I could only take 375 shares, which I did. So looking back on these three practice trades now, I think I really got carried away in a bad way. I think first of all, I must say that my stress levels throughout these three trades were getting really high. I eventually closed the last one, the one on BRP. I closed this one because my stress level was just too high. I definitely exceeded my limit, and it was so bad that at one point I thought to myself, like, I'm going to go do groceries later, and there's a good chance I'm gonna, if somebody bumps into my shopping cart or something, I might end up in the paper tomorrow. And that wasn't exactly the point of this exercise. The point of this exercise was to find my limits, and I not only found them, I definitely exceeded them. And although I did learn quite a few things from them, I closed it by being kind of upset because I really butchered my stats on the practice trades. And even though these are practice trades, I still care about them. I still want to be able to produce green, and I still want to be able to have data that I can look back on and be like, okay, I tried and I failed, or I tried and I succeeded. And I'm going to have to keep a mental note going forward, even though I have booked them anyway, that these two trades, these are not super realistic, at least not the second one here on BRP. APOP, I really do think that I did as best as I could, and that the conditions of my physiological conditions mixed with my internet conditions, those just happened to result in a way bigger loss than I had intended. And so this one on APOP is not bad, but I never would have opened these next two trades if I had been stuck in that situation on APOP. Now, the last thing I want to say about my practice trades is one trade that I've continually forgot about to tell you from the 14th, which is this one right here on BIMI. And during the recap on this day, I had taken this trade within the recap. I had this one showing on my screen while I was making the recap, and then I took a break from making the recap in order to take this one. And on this day, I was talking a lot about the risk-reward setups that I take and how I can get huge ratios based on my adding into strength and taking a low-risk entry, scaling into positions, etc. What I forgot to mention since then is that right after that, I took another one, and that one resulted in two add-ons, 3 entries, and a full stop out. I added on the way up, and then it went completely against me, and I stopped out. And that's something that I really wanted to show because I think it's important. I've been pointing out a lot that, okay, my initial risk is only this much because I'm only taking this much of an entry. And I think it's important to show the other side of the coin too, because sometimes I'm going to add into position and not get the follow through that I want. And this trade was precisely that. And what I mainly want to show here is the P&L of the situation. I added twice going up, and then this thing failed completely, and I ended up stopping out of the whole position at $9. And you can see that the net P&L is only $177, which compared to a medium-sized winner of $180 on my previous one, which I did recap, you can see that even when I'm adding on the way up and then I stop out of the whole thing on the way back down, it's still really strong. I'm still getting 1-to-1 in a complete failure situation. And so I just wanted to throw that out there before we get back to the simulator and back on track. So as we switch back to my daily results here in my simulator, I want to point out that during my trade on PDSB, I had made the decision not only to end the day, but to basically end the week as well. With my internet guy showing up tomorrow afternoon, the only exception I'm going to allow myself to make is I will allow myself to trade pre-market, potentially, if there's a setup. And the reason for that is the generally slower speed of trading compared to in regular market hours. And I really pissed myself off today with that trade, the second one on APOP. I felt like that was just setting myself up for failure. And even though I didn't experience any kind of internet issues during that trade, it only started happening on PDSB. I think that the trade itself was no good and added to all the problems I had later in the day on my practice trades. I just feel like I've been having way too many technical issues right now, and I really need to at least lock up the internet before I get involved. So, as a closing note, I'll point out that this account has now been open for 31 days, and I'm not exactly upset with the result right now. I do like my daily accuracy. I do not like my trade accuracy. However, I think there's been significant improvement being shown in this account so far, and there has certainly been significant improvement over my previous live account. And that even includes a snowball day, which I don't really think occurred in my previous live account. And despite all this, after 31 days, I'm still up, 25 or 27% ROE in this account. And that's a rate that I can easily grow this at. And that's a rate that, I can feel comfortable going back live if I were to continue it. And so I'm really happy about this. This to me is substantial improvement over what I've done in the past. And even though I could have done better, and I'm certainly looking to do better going forward, I am really happy with the progress that I've shown so far. And I also believe that I'm capable of a lot more. I feel like I've plugged a couple of leaks here and there, and that if I continue to build on the leaks that I plugged, then I'll be able to really make some substantial progress. I mean, I had one big ass snowball day here where I gave away basically $250 roughly. And despite that, I'm still up, and the impact of commissions is still really significant here. I mean, we're looking at around 40% impact of commissions, and that's before account fees as well. So despite all those really intense, overhead factors, I'm still up $500 in the account, 27% ROE. And to me, that screams I just need to boost the share size and boost the account value. If I were to start this with a $10,000 balance instead of a $2,000 balance, I feel like so many doors would open and everything would be a lot easier. Now, that's not what I intend to do. I do intend to really prove to myself that I can run it up from a low balance. But so far, 31 days into this thing, I'm feeling really good about the situation. I feel like I've learned quite a bit. And going forward, I'm definitely going to look to continue the discipline. I feel like today was actually a pretty good example. I found myself making some mistakes that I didn't like. And instead of snowballing it like I did on this day, I just cut it off and went straight into the practice. And I did not do that on this day. And that's a key difference. That is a substantial improvement. Most of my hatred of what I did today was the commissions. I feel like I overtraded, overmanaged trades. And so I did make quite a few mistakes, and still this is my second lowest losing day of this account so far. So going into tomorrow, I'm still carrying a pretty positive attitude. This day has not affected my attitude at all, although it was very stressful in all that experimentation. That's not going to carry forward into tomorrow. I do intend to, get a good night's rest today. I do have breakfast lined up for sure this time, so we won't have that issue again. And like I said, I will only be allowing myself to trade pre-market. So I don't expect a whole lot to go on tomorrow. Chances are I'll be inactive altogether. And if that's the case, I will talk to you next week.